Alright, Genesis 41 through 45. Hope everybody's had a good day and stuff. Mine was pretty stressful. There's saying people's got to get on your nerves the way they do. But people's there to test you, and I was definitely tested today. I was wanting to just smack the crud out of some people, but we got to learn to be long-suffering and to not let our anger get the best of us, and stress to get the best of us. But sometimes our anger and stress gets the best of us. So Joseph is still in jail or in prison. The butler and the baker was released. The butler is restored to his position, and the baker is hung. So 2 years later, Pharaoh had a dream, and it troubled him. So you look at Genesis 41, you can read about the dream and what happened in his dream, but I'm not going to get into that. But he had a dream, and he called for his interpreters, but no one could interpret his dream. And then the butler finally remembered Joseph, and he called for him, and Joseph came and interpreted his dream. He told him, basically, you're going to have 7 good years of harvest, and then there's going to be a great, grievous famine for 7 years after that. So then, Pharaoh liked what he heard, and he set Joseph over the land. So now Joseph was the governor of Egypt. So they gathered the corn as much as they could, without number, and they had it, and they preserved it, and then that way the 7 years of the famine, they had food still. And Joseph was married to the daughter of a priest of On. And now the priest, was he a priest of God, or is he a priest of other gods? But Joseph married a woman in Egypt. He had 2 sons. He had Manasseh, the firstborn, and Ephraim, the secondborn. So then, now there was a famine in the land, and Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt. And he told us, says, why do y'all look at each other? There's corn in Egypt. Go and get some so we can live and not die. So his 10 brethren, Joseph's 10 brethren went down to Egypt. But Benjamin they didn't take. Jacob wouldn't let them, so there wouldn't be no mischief fall on him like there did Joseph. So Joseph was the governor of the land, and the people came down. And Joseph saw his brethren and knew them, but he made himself strange to them. He talked to them through an interpreter, and they bowed to him, and he spoke roughly with them. You know, where have you come from? Why are you here? And they told him to buy food. And he remembered the dream, that how he would be over them and they would be beneath him. And he basically messed with them and said, well, y'all are spies. You came to see the nakedness of the land. And they said, no, we're here to buy food. Our servants come. We're all one man's son. We're true men. You know, we're not spies. And he kept messing with them, saying, well, no, you're spies. And was mean to them, and he told them to prove that they're not spies. And they tell them they can't go forth unless they bring their youngest brother, which is Benjamin. He wanted to see Benjamin. And he said, send one of you to fetch your brother, and you shall be kept in prison until your words may be proved. And so he bound one of their brothers in prison, while the other 9 returned to Jacob with the food. And so he gave them food and restored their money to them in their satchels. They didn't know that they had the money, and they kept he kept Simeon and bound him before their eyes and put him in prison. So they went back and told their father what happened, you know, that they was rough to them and all that, and said that they was spies and being accused. And then they looked in their sacks and saw their money was there, and they was afraid, because they're like, God, they're going to think we stole from them, you know. And they told Jacob what happened, and about they wanted to see the youngest son, Benjamin. And so Jacob was kind of freaked out, about being bereaved of Joseph, and then now Simeon's not there, and he's afraid Benjamin's going to be gone, and then he's like, why is all this stuff coming against me? And Reuben told him, he says, if we don't bring back Benjamin and Simeon, then you can kill my 2 sons. And so they was there for a while. Got to get you to see me here. And the famine was sore in the land, and then they ate everything that they had brought back. So Jacob sent them again. And Judah told him, the man told us we can't go back until our brother's with us. And he said, if you'll send our brother with us, we'll go down and buy the food. But if you won't send him, we won't go. The man said that he won't see us unless our brother's with us. So, but that all sums up. Benjamin went with them. So they went, and Jacob told him, God give you mercy before the man that he sends you away with your other brother and Benjamin. He said, if I'm bereaved of my children, then I'm bereaved. So they took double the money they had, and Benjamin, they went to Joseph, and Joseph saw them, and saw Benjamin with them. And he told the men to bring them to his house that they may dine with him at noon. And they did as Joseph told them, so they brought the men to Joseph's house. But the men were afraid because they had brought to Joseph's house. And they said, because the money was returned in their sack the first time we were brought in, they may find occasion on us, and fall upon us, and take us for bondage. So they came near to his house and communed with him at the door, and said, oh, sir, we came down the first time to buy food, and it came to pass, we opened our sacks and saw our money was still in there. We brought it again in our hand. And Joseph told him, fear not, for the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money. And he brought Simeon to him. And so the men went to Joseph's house, and they got water, and they washed their feet, and gave their asses provender, which is feeding their mules or whatever. And they made their present ready for Joseph, and he came in, and they ate there, and he came home and brought the present at the hand, and they bowed to the earth to him. And he asked them about their father, and he said, yes, he's alive. And he lifted up and saw his brother Benjamin, his son, his youngest brother. And he told Benjamin, God be gracious unto thee. And so Joseph was kind of getting emotional, so he kind of stepped out so he could weep. But he washed his, and he went out and washed his face and refrained himself. And they sat there with him and they ate. Well, they sat for him. Now he sat by himself. Because the Egyptians ate with him by themselves. And the thing is, what got me was the Egyptians can't eat at the same table with a Hebrew. Because it's an abomination to the Egyptians. Is that not wild? Their religious belief is it's an abomination to eat with a Hebrew. So they sent out the food, and they gave Benjamin 5 times more. And he told the men to fill their sacks with food as much as they could carry. But he told them to put his silver cup in Benjamin's sack. So the men went away, and they was gone out back to their city to Jacob to give him the food and stuff. And then Joseph pretended like his cup was stolen, so they went after him. And they searched their satchels and all that, and they found the cup in Benjamin's. And Joseph told him, "What have you done this?" And Judah was panicking. He says, "What shall we say unto my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how shall we clear ourselves? God has found out our iniquity." And basically they thought they was reaping what they did to Joseph. So then they basically went back. They brought him back to him. And then Joseph finally revealed himself and told him, "I'm your brethren. I'm Joseph. Does my father live?" And they told him, yes. And they basically wept and was happy, and then Pharaoh heard of uh, Joseph finding his brethren, was happy and invited them all down. So they, they basically went back, told their father, and what happened, and and his spirit was alive again. They revived his spirit because he knew Joseph was alive, and he'll be able to see him before he dies. So now the Israelites are now headed to Egypt to stay in Egypt, in the land of Goshen. And they will dwell there for over 400 years. And they'll be in bondage. See, but this is the start. God put Joseph in this situation. His brethren hated him. They sold him into slavery. His hand was blessed. He was prosperous. But he was thrown in prison because he was framed by his master's wife. And then he interpreted the Pharaoh's dream, and he was made governor of the land of Egypt. And now Israel shall come down to Egypt and dwell there for 400 years. And Joseph would take care of his father and his father's house and his brethren. And that is Genesis 41 through 45. And the next, 46 through 50, will basically be... Well, let me see how much time I got left. No, my main gauge just knocked 46 through 50 out too. Okay, I'll go ahead and do 46 through 50 with this and just go ahead and knock it out. So they took their journey, and Jacob arose and went their way, and Pharaoh sent wagons to bring them down, and their cattle and their goods. And then, of course, and it goes through the genealogy of their children, of Jacob's sons, and then their sons. And Joseph went up to meet Israel to Goshen and fell on his neck and wept on his neck for a good while. And Israel told Joseph, let me die, since I've seen thy face, because you're alive. Then so he went and introduced Israel to Pharaoh. And he basically taught him, what to say to Pharaoh and how to act and present himself to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh asked them, what's your occupation? They told him they was shepherds. And they told him, that way they could get in the land of Goshen and take care of Pharaoh's cattle. And he brought Jacob into Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Jacob, how old are you? Jacob told him, the days of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life been. Few and evil. Jacob's been through a lot of stuff. His brother tricked his brother out of his birthright, his blessing. Had his deal with his in-laws. And then now thought he lost his son and is being restored. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. So then they stayed in the land of Ramesses as Pharaoh had commanded. Joseph nourished his father and his brethren. There's no bread in all the land. The famine was very sore. And the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. So the land of Canaan was all getting all messed up from the famine. People. So then, people was buying the food with their money that Joseph had set up, but then the money started to fail because of the famine. People was getting out of money, so then they gave themselves as servants to Pharaoh for food. They gave their cattle, they sold their land. So Pharaoh grew under the hand of Joseph, because he was the governor of it. And everything was Pharaoh's. Only the land of the priest he got not from the priest. He gave them a portion of Pharaoh's. And they ate their portion of food which was given to them. And then basically Pharaoh was getting big and big and big. Then the time came that Israel must die. And he called Joseph and told him, and he blessed him. He wanted to make sure that he was brought out of Egypt to be put in his burying place. And then he took his two sons to be blessed by Jacob. And like with him and Esau, the youngest son will be over the older son. And he blessed them. And they'll have a everlasting possession. So Joseph got a double blessing because his sons are now a part of the 12 tribes of Israel. So Joseph is part of the 12 tribes, but now Ephraim and Manasseh are a part of the 12 tribes. So they basically take over Joseph's spot as the 12 tribes, but his two sons now have those. And then so his eyes were getting dim, and Joseph, Israel blessed his sons. And Joseph was like, well, why are you blessing the youngest over the oldest, and he told him that's the blessing they get. Because his brethren have one portion, but he has two. And then Jacob blesses his sons, all of his sons, in chapter 49. And it's a beautiful chapter if you read it, of their blessings that his 12 sons get. And those are the 12 tribes of Israel. He charged them. He was gathered to his people, and he wanted to be buried in the cave that he bought. That was bought by Abraham. Not by him, I can't remember who bought it. But it was brought for a burying place, where Abraham and Sarah was buried there. Isaac and Rebekah was buried there, and Leah was buried there. And he died. He gave up his ghost and was gathered to his people. Joseph fell on his face and wept, and he kissed him. And they embalmed him, so they mummified him. And then so Joseph went and took his father and buried him in the land that he bought. They went up with chariots and horsemen with great company. They carried him to the land of Canaan, and they buried him in the field. Joseph returned to Egypt with his brethren and everyone. And Joseph's brethren saw that their father died. They said, Joseph will hate us, and he'll certainly requite us from all this evil we've done to him. And Joseph told him, forgive, I pray thee now, the trespass of thy brethren and their sins. He told him, I'm not going to hurt you, I'm going to take care of you. I do forgive you. He's in the place of God. You thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, and to bring to pass as it is this day, to save much people alive. He said he'd nourish them and comfort them. And he dwelt in Egypt and lived 110 years. And he saw Ephraim's children to the third generation. And the sons of Manasseh. And he blessed his children and their children. He told them, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from hence. And Joseph died, being 110 years old. And they embalmed him and put him in a coffin. So he was mummified too. See, the thing is, like I caught this, people's going to do evil to you. And they think they're doing evil to you, but God can use it as good. So no matter what kind of stuff people put us through, God can use it for a good purpose, rather than just us suffering from people's thoughts and their imaginations toward us and their actions toward us. And that is the end of Genesis. So now we'll start Exodus. But the time frame between Joseph